Well, good morning from London and welcome to an FS Club webinar on China's green finance strategy during the 14th fifth year plan. Now we have absolutely a star-studded audience here today. We have Wenjian Fang from the Bank of China with his colleagues Kang Chu, Lu Li, and Rhea Zhang, and also Gerard Lyons. So it's going to be a fascinating presentation, principally because you're getting it from the horse's mouth. I think far too often we've been hearing about China's green finance strategies indirectly through the press, and this is a chance to hear what's really going on the ground. Now, I'm Michael Mainelli. I'm one of the directors of Xian, and it really is a privilege to be able to introduce many of these webinars, and I can only do so due to the generosity of our sponsors. But I would add to that the tolerance of our sponsors who allow us to range widely and freely across technology, economics, and finance. And it really is a privilege to be doing that. Now, today's format is a slight change from the usual, but only a slight change. My job is to get out of the way as quickly as possible so that you can hear from our experts. Then we're going to have a presentation from Mr. Fang, a short introduction to the situation. Then Dr. Li will be presenting in some depth with some excellent slides, I think, what's going on in the green finance area in China. And then we're going to have a panel of three, Dr. Li, Dr. Zhang, and Dr. Chu, who will be there to answer questions for you. As ever, the format is that the slides are already up on the site so that you can peruse them in detail or go back. The recording will be up in approximately 2 working days, so in other words, probably late Monday night. And finally, and the most importantly, please do use the question and answer facility in GoToWebinar to send questions to me, which I will feed into the conversation with Dr. Li, Dr. Zhang, and Dr. Chu. And the reason for that is that it allows us to control what's going on, but more importantly, if you've got any detailed questions, if you send them through, they will be getting all of the Q&A with your emails, and they can respond to you directly about reports or websites or information that you're after. So it should be quite a fun and interactive session. And just before we kick off, a personal word here that one of the things I've constantly been saying for 30 plus years, first traveled in China in '83, but around 1990, I really began to see signs of genuine Chinese interest in protecting the environment. And I think that's often unremarked by us in the West. This is not a recent trend, but we'll get on to that in a moment. So with no more ado, if I could ask some of our panelists to slip behind the scenes, I'd like to hand the floor to Wenjian Fang.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. I try not to be on the way for too long as well, I think. And I must take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to FS Club and to Professor Michael Mainelli in particular, for giving us a platform to share our views and opinions with the audience here today. And I think we all know that in recent years, there has been a lot of disagreement between China and the US, and recently between China and UK. But in one particular area, I think in the area of climate change or taking action to tackle the challenge of climate change, there's, I think, rare consensus. So everybody agrees on the importance of this subject. So I think since there is such a consensus, I think people shouldn't wait too long to take actions. I think we should move forward. I think the COP26 this year, hosted by UK in Glasgow, is going to be a very good opportunity for UK and China to work together. I think so. That's why I think today's seminar, I think webinar is really taken at a very good time for people to be warmed up, to be ready, for very meaningful, discussions or actions, at the time of COP26. I think Bank of China and other Chinese companies are very sincere in taking actions, to follow the government, strategy in tackling climate change or green sector. And so I think recently, I think Bank of China, as an example, have decided to join the TCFD, and that shows, how sincere we are about our efforts, to move further. I think we have a research center here in London who has always endeavored to keep us at the forefront of the new policy initiatives of Bank of China and keep, this, policy, communicated with the local industry. So I'd like to give special thanks to my team as well, who have prepared for today's session, and also special thanks to Dr. Gerard Lyons, who we are very proud to have as Bank of China's INET, and also is a tutor to our research team. Thanks for Dr. Lyons, who have joined us today, and he will share his insight as well. I think today's topic, I think, is to help people here to understand China's strategy in the green, area, especially the green finance area, which has been incorporated into the 14th five-year plan. And I hope people can understand more about China's ambition in this subject after today's session. And so, without further ado, I would like to hand over to my teams, and I wish you enjoy the webinar today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wenjian. And now I'm going to hand the floor over to Dr. Lu Li, who is the chief economist at the Bank of China and one of the research team that Wenjian was referring to, which is a particularly strong and interesting team. Dr. Li.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thanks to Wenjian and its Financial Service Club for organizing this such great event. It's a real pleasure to be here as a part of this webinar to share with you some of the views of how green finance development in China and what does China's 14th five-year plan mean for green finance. So next slide, please. Yeah, sorry, Michael, because I can't see the slide. Is it my side of problem?
We can see the slides at the moment. We're looking, we just moved from the outline slide to China's climate.
Okay, then I'll start, yeah. I'll start from this page, yeah. Thank you. Well, what I will cover today in my presentation, as you see, is listed on this slide. So for the background, I will start with China's climate ambitions, and then I'm going to look at China's green finance practices, especially the development for the past 4 or 5 years. And the last, I'm going to discuss more details in China's green finance strategy during the 14th five-year plan. Next slide, please. So in last September, China made the biggest climate commitment ever made by any country. President Xi Jinping has made the pledge to the United Nations General Assembly that China will aim to reach peak greenhouse gas emissions by the end of the decade, and then move on to achieve net zero emissions by 2060. So this is the first time that China announced a long-term trajectory for decarbonization, which I think is quite massive and important announcement. So the ambition will transform China from one of the world's largest emitters to achieving a balance of emissions in less than 40 years. Next slide, please. Actually, China has already made considerable progress in reducing carbon emission during the last decade. So the carbon intensity, which is the greenhouse emission per unit of GDP, has gradually declined, and the amount in 2019 dropped by nearly 50% from 2005 level. But meanwhile, we can see that China has remained the key driver of global growth for many years. So with the contribution to the global GDP growth being nearly 30%. Well, in terms of energy consumption, China has decreased its reliance on coal and increased investments in clean energy, such as wind, hydro, and solar power. So the share of coal was cut to 57% in 2019 from over 70% in 2007. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So in page 7, in page 6, so China's green finance system was established in 2015. So one of the most fundamental objectives is to mobilize lots of financial resources to address the environment issues. So back to 9 years around 2013, 2014, I still can remember China had this severe air pollution. So I think these directly increased investment in green areas for example, like launching clean energy project. Well, another objective is to manage financial risks related to climate change. So based on these objectives, China developed the policy framework for green finance, which consists of 5 pillars, including taxonomies, which defines the green activity. And second is policy incentives, because lots of green projects may not have high financial returns. So the government came up with this policy incentive to increase financial returns so that the private sector is more willing to participate. And the third one is called disclosure. So the owner of green project need to disclose the relevant information to prove their environmental benefits. And the fourth is financial product innovation. Besides green credits, green loans, other products such as green bond, green fund, and also like green insurance need to be developed to meet the diverse demand from this green financial sector. And the last pillar is called international cooperation. So China is actively engaged in international efforts on climate change mitigation and also green finance development. For example, the G20 Sustainable Finance Study Group was first set up under China's G20 presidency and to explore different options for addressing the challenges of scaling up green finance. Next slide, please. So now, China is already one of the world leaders in green finance, with many policies implemented during the past few years. For example, in August 2016, with the approval of the State Council, so China's central bank and the 6 other ministries and the commissions jointly issued these guidelines for establishing the green financial system, which represented the initial formation of China's green financial policy system, and was also the world's first complete national policy framework to support green finance. So since then, issue-specific policies were gradually formulated, such as policies on green loans, green bonds, information disclosure, and also the carbon emission trading system. Next slide, please. So China has established one of the world's largest green financial markets. For example, China has extended a very large amount green loans. So the outstanding amount is nearly 12 trillion RMB, which makes it the world's biggest green lender. And most of green loans went to green infrastructure and the clean energy area. Well, compared to other loans, green loans have a higher growth rate. Meanwhile, green loans in China have also performed better than conventional loans. So we can see that the NPL ratio of China's green loans was about 1 percentage point lower than other loans, which suggests that green loans are less risky. Next slide, please. So China's green bond market was launched in 2016, and within a year, with just a year, it became the top issuer of green bonds globally. Since then, China has been constantly ranked among the largest bond issuers globally, and is the world's second largest market by total bonds outstanding. But it is worth noting that although China has made this significant progress to close the gap between local and international green bond standards, there is still a gap between So according to the Climate Bond Initiative, so only 56% of labeled Chinese green bonds issued in 2019 aligned with both Chinese and the CBI definitions. Next slide, please. Well, regarding emissions trading, so China has just launched the National ETS earlier this year, and aims to start trading by the end of June. So this will be the world's largest carbon market. So during the past few years, China has carried out pilot schemes of ETS markets in 3 provinces and 5 cities since 2013, which covered nearly 3,000 industrial emitters and traded over 400 million tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas. And in the future, the national ETS is expected to cover 40% of national carbon emissions at its initial stage, and will gradually to expand to cover more. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And so in page 12. So for the future agenda, China released its 14th five-year plan in March this year. So which spell out priorities for China up to 2025. So climate and energy is definitely one of them, which appears many times throughout the document. And the 14th five-year plan includes several important targets for climate and energy. For example, to decrease carbon intensity by 80% by the end of 2025, and raise the share of non-fossil energy in total energy consumption to around 20% by 2025. And it is worth mentioning that the 14th five-year plan has not set a GDP growth target, which is quite interesting, because previously China usually set an ambitious GDP target. So without such target, it actually gives the freedom to the local governments and to the firms to seek the best quality growth rather than just hit the number. Well, also another side is the dual circulation development model has been emphasized for the economy, which aims to boost the economy's internal circulation, so making this domestic production and consumption the main engine, the main driver of economic growth. So under this strategy, to make China's economy more resilient against external shocks, so China will likely to reduce its dependency on oil import. So currently, over 70% of China's oil and gas are imported from other countries. So if this is the case, China can only develop renewable energy faster. So I think all these elements within the five-year plan, they are all supporting and reinforcing the energy transition. Next slide, please. Well, despite the notable progress that China has already made, the green finance capacity within its financial system remains grossly insufficient to meet the huge demand for green and low carbon investment. So it is estimated that by 2030, China will need to invest 2.2 trillion yuan per year to reduce carbon emissions. And this amount will further grow to 3.9 trillion yuan from 2030 to 2060, as the government could only cover like 10% to 50% of funds needed. So most of the financing gap would have to be filled by the private sector. So China needs to and will take more aggressive measures to further promote green finance in the following years. Next slide, please. Specifically, there are 3 areas that China will focus on to further development green finance system and support green transition. So the first one is to mobilize public and private funds to support the green economy. One aspect is about green finance standard. So about 1 week ago, China's central bank just finished revising the green bond catalog by removing fossil fuel projects. And China is also working with the EO right now to converge green investment taxonomies across the 2 markets. And another aspect is information disclosure. So a mandatory information disclosure system will be established this year to cover all financial institutions, bond issuers, and some other market players. Also, the central bank will support green finance through like strengthening policy incentives, for example, take rating action for commercial banks. Next slide, please. Second, it is very important to manage financial risks related to climate change. Well, compared to other major economies, for example, the EU achieved the carbon peak around 1980, so it has 70 years to move to net zero. And for the US, it has about 45. It has about 45 years. But according to China's plan, from peak to net zero, it only has 30 years. So the time is much shorter and the curve is much steeper for China. It also means financial institutions in China will be faced high risks during this transition period. For example, if you're lending or investing in a lot of polluting or high carbon sectors, these institutions may end up very high by loans. So to get financial sector preparing this situation and increase financial stability at central bank level, so China's central bank is looking at the possibility of including climate factors in financial stress tests. And at financial institutions level, they are encouraged to evaluate and manage their climate risks. So one of the most basic, important, and also difficult tasks is to establish a national carbon accounting system, which is used to measure and disclose the carbon emissions of financial portfolios. Next slide, please. The last one. So the last one is international cooperation. It matters a lot to China, which includes regional cooperation in Asia and also global cooperation. So in Asia, this green awareness has grown about the risk of climate change, partly due to damage from natural disasters across the region in recent years. And in the future, it is expected that central banks in Asia will work together and investing in green bonds in the region through an Asian bond fund. And for global cooperation last month, the G20 Sustainable Finance Study Group was elevated to a working group. So China will, as a co-chair, so China will work together with others, consider how to improve existing approaches to sustainability disclosures, building on the work of TCFD. And this year, the most significant event to improve global climate action is COP26. so which will be hosted in Glasgow by the UK. I think this will be a fantastic opportunity for the UK and China's environmental partnership. And another area is the green investment principles for the Belt and Road. So these principles were first proposed in the 9th UK-China Economic and Financial Dialogue to incorporate low carbon and sustainable development into projects in Belt and Road countries. So far, around 40 Chinese and foreign financial institutions have joined. For example, Bank of China, HSBC, so all among the signatories. So China will continue to implement these and expand the number of signatories. Well, in addition to country level, for Bank of China ourselves, as one of the biggest bank in China, so we have actively participate in global platforms on green finance. And in the future, we look forward to continuing support a sustainable and inclusive world by growing our existing platform for green finance. Next slide, please. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. So I hope you find this presentation informative, and we can discuss more in the Q&A session if you have any questions. Thank you.
Dr. Li, that was fantastic. And if Dr. Zhang and Dr. Chu could join us, very information-packed, very informative, very candid. I've got quite a few questions, but folks do send in questions, comments, or observations quickly. So we've only got about 15 minutes. Let me start, if I might, with a small detailed question. It's from Eric Johnson. You talked about the gap between China's green bond definition and the global definition. Could you just give a couple of details so people can get a handle on where the differences are?
Yeah. So in terms of the global green bond definitions, first I want to say that there is still lack of like unified global standard on green bonds. So I think this is something that regulators from different countries will work on in the future. So how to harmonize all these different standards and definitions. And the difference between China's bond definition and, for example, the CBI the definitions, they're actually like there are three key areas that main difference. So the first one is China's green definitions lack of information on the use of proceeds. So people don't need to disclose the exactly after you raise money, you don't need to disclose this. But from my view and observed, so only a small portion of Chinese green bonds had insufficient information. So the firms have already disclosed this kind of information. And the second thing is the taxonomy is different. So that is how you define green a project, if this is green or if this is not. So in China, before this year, I think the main difference is China's definitions include like clean coal and hydropower, these kind of things included in this green catalog.
Okay.
Yeah, but just I said, like about 1 week ago, China updated this catalog and they removed all fossil fuel related, for example, clean coal. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's helpful. Karina Robinson, who's a past master of the Worshipful Company of International Bankers, says you gave a very illuminating presentation. Would the team like to talk just a little bit more about the new 5-year plan and the idea of downplaying GDP growth and more emphasis on quality of growth? quite an ambitious plan, especially for such a large country with such a large population. And Eric Johnson too, same idea really. Do you think China's climate ambitions are achievable? And you needn't answer at great length, but I think the audience is just sort of curious about this quality of growth issue.
I think maybe I can have this question. I think these goals are absolutely achievable because these goals are not set based on an ad hoc basis, but are all based on extensive research, consultation with experts, and also scientific basic method. So in terms of the goal itself, it is achievable. However, in terms of implementation, I think it's difficult to tell at this current stage. I think the plan is currently taking shape. A research paper has been published by Tsinghua University, I think in Q4 last year, to providing policy recommendation to the detailed plan to achieve the goal set it. And I think to achieve or to implement these plan, the grand plan, it really demands three things. The first thing is the top design of the strategy, which we have done a lot of research. And then the second is the consistency of the policy across prefectures, across provinces. So these will prevent the carbon leakage from one province who is very restricted on the environment problems to the other provinces. So this is the second point, is the consistency of the policy of the province level. And the third is the bottom-up level, is to increase the public awareness of the environmental issues. I think this is a very important issue, and we currently lack of awareness. And this should have been predated the green transition of the country. So I think this is the root cause to change our behaviors and to really achieve the goal we set up in the five-year plan. So that's my answer to the question. I hope it helps.
Michael, if I may add one quick point on this question, because this is it's very fantastic question. Because I think green development is development. So it's not enemy to the GDP growth. It's a friend, I think. So maybe my view is in the future, green development will be the a core part of the development of the Chinese economy, and will be a core part of the GDP growth as well. So I think they're friends. Thank you.
Excellent point. Bob McDowell raises a point. He's basically it's a diverse range of opportunities and activities in green finance here, and in addition, of course, there's a lot of regional activity going on that may or may not be cohesive and cooperative with sort of the national. Could you just spend maybe 45 seconds on how is the reporting structure for this working in China?
The reporting schemes, I think maybe for China, as we all know that China is a big country, I think the reporting system is more like a more decentralized system, that the local government, they will prioritize their goal first, and then they will negotiate this with the higher up, the provincial level government, and then the provincial level government will aggregate their needs and then probably work out what exactly is the problem there and how to solve them.
Okay. Eric Johnson is curious. Can you share anything more on China's national ETS plans, the emissions trading system?
Yeah, I can take this question. Yeah, thank you for this question. Yeah, as I just mentioned, the national ETS was just launched earlier this year and will be running hopefully at the end of June. So at current stage, the regulators are collecting opinions on these operational rules. So I think this will help China achieve climate ambitions by using like market-based mechanisms. Because only we can price in all these carbon emission risks, we can find out. We can use these as like an incentive or constraints. So to make it really efficient. So I think at its initial stage, it only covers a power section. The reason why China start with power section is because 80% of China's electricity was generated from coal, which covers like 40% of China's whole carbon emissions. So that's why China will start with power sector, and then maybe gradually improve to other 7 carbon-intensive sectors, for example, chemical or domestic aviation. Yeah, so that's all from here.
May I add one point? I think the major difference between the Chinese carbon emission trading system from the European or the international ones is the attributes of the product. Which is the emission trading analysis, if I'm right. So in the European emission trading system, they are considered as financial product. However, in the Chinese carbon system, it's considered as a common or a commodity. So instead of a financial product. So at this current stage, the trading volume hasn't been increased yet, or is not well established enough. But while the market grows, we will see financial derivatives coming on or come alive in the Chinese emission trading system.
Douglas from Doublewing, who does a fair amount of work in China, is just curious. You mentioned Idai-Ilu, the Belt Road Initiative. Do you have any numbers on the current volume or just the share of green finance in BRI projects? Is that Dr. Li? Would that be for you, perhaps? So there's the share of green finance in Belt Road Initiative projects.
Yeah, I think. So it's increasing for the green infrastructure. So China is working with, for example, other Asian countries and countries along with the Belt and Road. So China is working with them. As I mentioned, the GIP, the green investment principles, and China is aiming to expand it more. To let more financial institutions to be included, so we can work together to building like green belt and road initiatives.
Okay. Andrew Ross says that China is using gross ecosystem product rather than GDP to value the natural capital ecosystem assets in Qinghai province, the water tower of Asia, as a charge on downstream infrastructure development. Is this featured in the 14th five-year plan? Or is that a more regional thing?
Michael, yeah, let me take this question. Yeah, I think this is a trial in Qinghai province, because you know, as President Xi Jinping saying, protecting the source of, for example, water resource for China is a most important job for the province in West, rather than the GDP growth. So I think this is some kind of trial will be extended to the western part of the China, but I don't think it will be a national strategy, because you know, there's only a couple of provinces who are the water resources source for the country.
Thank you. Durgesh Rao, thanks you again for the presentation, very informative. He's curious about Bank of China itself. Would Bank of China be involved in carbon trading and ESG related investments? Durgesh works in financial markets.
Maybe Dr. Chi would like to take this question.
Yeah, I think definitely, as Mr. Fang just said, Bank of China is going to invest heavily, significantly, substantially in green area, including the carbon area, and also green bond as well. So we've already done a lot of work and job in this, but we are still, you know, long way to go. And yeah, we will do that definitely. And that's why we try to use today's platform, and thanks for Michael's platform to connect, or create more opportunities for us to work together.
Super. Well, in fact, related to that, a final question in the time available. Just a kind of a warning for Gerard. I think the biggest set of unanswered questions, Gerard, are, what are the biggest challenges to China achieving its goals in green finance? From Bob McDowell, Mike Wardle, and some others. But for our panel here, just a closing question. Chris So and Aman Wong are really kind of curious. You mentioned that one of the 5 pillars was international cooperation. What specific areas of cooperation would you like to see more of between the UK and China to achieve net zero?
Maybe I will take this question. I think the most important thing is the taxonomy and the unified taxonomy, and also the unified disclosure standards. Because at the moment we will see a lot of disclosure standards out there, like TCFD, like GRI, like CDP, PRI. I can going on and on. I think a unified taxonomy and disclosure standards will definitely help us, not only financial institutions, but also for our clients to really know ourselves, to enhance the information transparency, to know ourselves as well as know our clients. So to know ourselves better, that we can have more informed, better informed decisions, to have better decisions making, and also at the same time to manage our risks better. So I think that's the most important thing, and also the most important challenge that we're facing at this moment.
Well, I'm very sad that the format means we have to kind of close, but you've been a super panel, and Dr. Lee, everybody really loved your presentation. I'll be sending all those questions and comments on to you. And now just some closing words, if we might, from Gerard Lyons. Gerard, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Professor Minnelli, and thank you to my colleagues at Bank of China for giving us such an insightful presentation. My brief comments are to focus really on 3 areas. To make a success of climate change and addressing it properly, we need to look at politics, economics, and finance and get all 3 right. And in that respect, some of the comments we've heard today really demonstrate the important role that China and the UK working together can achieve in these areas. If we take politics, at the end of the day, we need to watch what countries do, not just listen to what they say. There's been a great political change in terms of addressing the climate change agenda. The UK and China are both at the forefront of that. The UK already has a very ambitious 2050 plan to achieve net carbon zero. What was very evident today was that China has both an ambitious long-term strategy, but also a very ambitious short-term goal. China aims to achieve net carbon zero by 2060, but as was highlighted today, it wants to achieve peak carbon emissions by 2030. That's very, very much of a challenge. Now, it's quite clear that the UK and the US are now about to have a more robust relationship with China in areas such as defense, security, intelligence. Business and finance need to work around that. One of the underlying messages today, though, was that in the area of climate change, the UK, the US, and China can and will and indeed need to work closely together. And to conclude on this point, the point at the end there about the need for globally acceptable and enforceable standards are something that politics globally needs to work together on. If we move to the economics, what's very interesting is Professor Minnelli correctly at the beginning pointed out that China has been at the forefront of this issue for some time. What I've observed, both from being an INED non-exec director at Bank of China and also being on the advisory board of the Grantham Research Institute of Climate Change here in London, is how the debate within China has changed. Earlier this century, China was looking to have growth at all costs. Rich countries exported their pollution problem to poorer countries, including China, and within China, they exported the problem to the poorer regions. There was less pressure put on firms in terms of environmental standards. It was about generating jobs. That evolution has really come a long way. Initially, it was about risk versus return. China facing risks in the area of water and environmental damage. And Dr. Koo pointed out very importantly, it's now evolved even further to growth and addressing the green agenda seen as going hand in hand. Hence the importance of the green agenda in the latest 5-year plan. Of course, addressing the issue in terms of the Belt Road Initiative remains very important. But the key message on the economic front is that measurable targets are vitally important economically in China. They tend to meet their measurable targets. And on the green agenda, we now see measurable economic targets. Third and finally, the essence of today's debate was about the role China is taking in terms of the financial sector. Those 5 pillars are vitally important, but in my view, the third and the fourth are very much to the fore in terms of the financial sector. Third is disclosure, echoing many of the things that have been put to the forefront here in the UK under our previous governor at the Bank of England. And the fourth pillar is about financial product innovation. We didn't maybe go into that in full detail today, but basically there's more international money looking to invest in ESG and environmentally friendly assets. China is seeking to have deeper and broader capital markets, and within that, the green agenda and green assets are very much at the forefront of their thinking. It's about managing expectations, of course. We have a long way to go, but I think the emissions trading point that was made and getting private financing and funding in is also very important. But to put it together, 3 areas where the UK and China need to work together: politically, economically, and financially. And what I think is very interesting is that we have detailed plans already evident, as you've heard today. And indeed, as I see from Bank of China, the chairman of Bank of China has been invited by the UK government to attend the COP26 summit later this year. So despite what you hear in the public media about relationships between China, the UK, etc., I think in this area, there's great opportunity for global cooperation. And to finish, I think London and the City of London is really well placed as somewhere where we can do not only business in, but business from, in terms of the Belt Road and other green type of issues. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Lyons. And perhaps the other panelists might like to join us as I just quickly wind up. Thank you also, Jared, for such an upbeat message. I think this message of cooperation is really, really fantastic. And Ian Shackle just wanted to thank all of you. But what he points out is such a clear and specific presentation of plans. And going back, as Dr. Liu showed us, to 2012, where this has really been very, very forceful and forthright. And I'm delighted to see it. And I thank you very much for sharing it. And I wish that many other governments were capable of such clear and specific presentations of their plans. I realize you're not the government interpreting it, but nevertheless, it's nice to see that. Anyway, in terms of thanks, if I may, well, firstly, I'd like to thank our sponsors as ever. I'd like to thank the audience. You've been absolutely super. All your comments and questions will be sent on to the team. But most of all, Wenjian, you've been absolutely super for assembling such a distinguished panel today. And we really appreciate the work that everybody did, but particularly Dr. Lee getting into that and really coming forward with a presentation that everybody has really adored. I'm unable to, on the other hand, in current technology terms, open the floodgates of applause, but I have, as ever, my Korean karmic clapper, and I thank you that way. And that will sadly have to do during this time of COVID, but hopefully we'll meet up soon physically and learn more, because a 5-year plan needs to be reviewed every 5 years. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jared. Thank you so much. Thanks to my team.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's a very good seminar. I think it's great. Thank you. Very efficient, I think, and very informative as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.